Hey there, because I got a flat tire on my bike and I'm quite a few miles from home, I'm going to be waiting for a ride, so I decided now would be a great time to make my video on capitalism and exploitation. Here we go. Alright, so let's start off by going over the term exploitation. A lot of you, especially capitalists, when you think of this, you think of workers laboring in sweatshops for 16 plus hours for just pennies a day being driven by some merciless, cruel boss. This would be contrasted by your idea of a normal situation under capitalism, which workers receive a decent wage, enough for a middle-class standard of living like health insurance, social security, retirement, all that good stuff. So while sweatshops are a very good example of exploitation, probably one of the worst cases out there, us socialists, for the most part, have a much broader and more scientific definition of the word, which is, let me read this off, the forced appropriation of the unpaid labor of workers. Under this definition, almost all working class people are exploited. Now, I would argue that the ultimate source of profit, the pretty much driving force behind capitalist production, is the unpaid labor of workers. So, for us leftists, exploitation is pretty much the very foundation of capitalism. All the billions in bonuses for Wall Street bankers, every dividend paid to the shareholders of industrial corporations, every dollar collected by capitalists and landlords, all of this is the result of uncompensated labor of working class people. And because exploitation is at the root of capitalism, it makes sense that the only way to do away with exploitation is to achieve an entirely different society. Libertarian socialism, a society in which there is no tiny minority at the top that can exploit the rest. Exploitation, however, isn't just unique to capitalism. It appears in statism and other hierarchical relationships as well. It's pretty much been a feature of all class societies, where basically divided into at least two main classes, like the exploited class that produces the wealth and the exploiters that get it. Now, under slavery, it's naked obvious, like the slave is forced by the lash to the master, who just provides just enough to keep the slave alive. All the rest of the fruits of their labor are forcefully appropriated to the slave owner. Similarly, feudalism, like in its most classical form, the serfs work on a plot of land that belonged to the lord. They work for a part-time for themselves, yet producing their means of subsistence, and the rest of the time the product belonging to the lord. Now, in terms of the terms of exploitation are clear to like serf and lord alike. The serf labors for the lord and receives nothing from the lord in return. So, capitalism, however, is different among the chief forms of class societies. For instance, Marx looked at the exploitative nature of labor is hidden behind the wage system. Now, examples in cases of are outright fraud, or workers are hired, labor given for an amount of time, and you receive a wage in return. It appears on the surface that an equal exchange has taken place, but that's not the case. Correction, almost nothing. I just don't want to redo that whole clip. Alright, so why not? The capitalist, in addition to purchasing various inputs into the productive process, machinery, raw materials, all that, is what Marx called labor power, increments of workers' time during which the capitalist controls the workers' creative and physical energies. Now, under capitalism, most needs are met for those who can afford them by commodities, commodities being like goods and services for sale on the market. Working class people who don't own the means to produce and sell commodities have one commodity they can sell, which is their own labor power, like their ability to work. In this way, workers are forced to sell themselves to some capitalists piecemeal in order to acquire money to buy the necessities and need to live. So, when a capitalist pays a worker a wage, they are not paying for the value of a certain amount of like completed labor, but for labor power. The soaring inequality in the contemporary society kind of shows this. Over the past few years of, I'll say 30 years of neoliberalism, the wealth that workers create has increased, but it has not quite been reflected in wages, which have remained stagnant. Instead, increasing proportion of the wealth produced by workers swelled into the pockets of the super rich, who did not compensate the workers for their increased production on the job. So I'd just like to make it clear again, I've said this in my other videos, this relationship isn't quite voluntary. It's only voluntary to the point where you get to choose who exploits you. You don't get to choose not to be exploited. I mean, in my last video I made the highwayman analogy, which I kind of realized wasn't a very good way to put it now. But a lot of you said, well, this is sort of like life and death. If you don't work, you simply die. Now, the problem isn't that you need to work. In almost all cases, you would need to do this. The problem is that you have to give into some sort of exploitation, that you have to have some of your work stolen from you. And I think I've gone over the claim, just start a commune. It doesn't work. So, again, just more points for left libertarianism. Hope this video was alright. I don't have anything to read off of like usual, so Thank you for watching. Bye.